I first played Yakuza in 2005. My mom had a friend who went over to Japan and brought me back a game I'd never heard of. And he told me, I heard you like Shenmue, and the guy at the store said this is basically just a successor to that. And that was enough to get me excited. So I popped it in my system, got ready to play it, and then, wouldn't you believe, that was when a young child had his illusion shattered by realizing that there was a thing called region locking. My friend had a Japanese PlayStation, and I went over to his house, and I got to play it for maybe a few hours. A few hours was all I need to know that, well, two things were going to happen. One, I was not going to understand a fucking thing that was going on. And two, I was going to fall in love all over again like I did with Shenmue the first time. Now, people love to remind us that Shenmue is just crappy voice acting and clunky controls, but Shenmue wasn't really about that for me. It was about culture shock. See, I loved Japan long before that, but I loved it as that anime zaniness that you grow up on Saturday mornings. I think there's a lot of people my age who still feel about it that exact way. Shenmue was the shocking twist. It was the culture shock that I needed to really fall in love with a culture and a people, as opposed to a product. And Yakuza did exactly that for me. And even though I couldn't understand it, once I got into the game and I played around in it, I realized exactly why I loved Shenmue in the first place. It was deja vu. Falling in love all over again with a country. And I've been playing the franchise ever since then. Last year, I finally got to go to Japan. I finally got to experience the country that I've wanted to experience for years. And the experience did not let me down. Now, I've been to Kabukicho. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. When O's have that dash on them, I get a little confused. But I can say this. If you haven't been and you like Yakuza, you're going to want to go there, because there are moments where you walk down the street and verbatim, the game copies the street identical to real life. Now, some things are different. Walking down the main street, you'll see a giant Godzilla peeking over the tall buildings. But when you start down that main street, you'll walk right past the Don Quixote. It's a lot bigger on the inside than in the game, but it's there. It's a real building. It's a real store. You'd be surprised how many deals Yakuza has cut over the years. Because every one of the vending machine drinks is a real drink. Most of the stores are real. The karaoke places, real. You will get culture shock from playing the game. Now, and this is important, I only preface that I've been playing it since 2005. For one very important reason. We're going to have to talk about a time period that a lot of Yakuza fans might not remember. Maybe because you started at Yakuza 0, or maybe because you phased out of the franchise, or maybe because it's been going so well for you that you just sort of forgot you lived through it. Now, I'm not trying to isolate anybody. I don't want to turn people off. I love Yakuza. It's one of the games I stream religiously. I named both of my stream bots, Batsuma Kiryu and Goro Bachima, off the main characters. It's one of my favorite franchises. And I don't want anybody to think that wherever they jumped in the franchise should matter. No, I want everybody to experience the game, but it is very hard to talk about the PlayStation 3 era of the Yakuza franchise with people that haven't lived it. Mainly because, since Yakuza 0, you've gotten to see Yakuza at its best, on the upturn, doing very well. Judgment had a dual audio track, and that's crazy considering the fact the last time the franchise did that was back in 1. And it wasn't even dual audio, it was just the English, but it was back in 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, Dead Souls, 6, Kiwami 2, 0. No. And that's important because that was a concession. That was a way to cut back on money. They didn't have to pay English voice actors. They just had to pay someone to translate the Japanese. It works a lot better because, especially if you played the franchise, you know, I kind of prefer the Japanese. I couldn't play Judgment without it, to be completely honest. I also felt the lip sync was a little off, but because a lot of the characters are recorded in Japanese, of course it was going to be off. It felt like watching a dubbed movie. But I want to talk about the PlayStation 3 era for a second, and it's going to matter later on. It's going to sound weird that we're going to go over this and we're going to cover this, but I swear to God, all of this is leading to Yakuza 7, which is now being called Yakuza like a Dragon in America. Now, I don't like the American name, and I want to explain to you why I don't like the American name for it. I don't like that they're doing that, and it very heavily requires you to understand the PlayStation 3 and kind of experiencing that, because it was a weird time for them. So, cutting the trivia out of 3 wasn't the most significant thing in the world. It was a minor part of a massive game. And while the game isn't as big as the ones we have now, still a pretty big game, right? But it was telling because the game required you to have some kind of basic knowledge of Japanese. Whether that was knowledge of Tokyo, knowledge of shrines, knowledge of history, knowledge of politics. I'm not 100% sure. Never got to play it. It's only in the Japanese version. But to be honest, I don't even know if it's in the Japanese re-release. But I know it's in the original Japanese version. Anyway, it was not so much problematic that it wasn't in the game, but it was kind of telling that 3 had a lot of things cut because they thought the Western audiences wouldn't understand them. And to some degree, they were probably right. Obviously, I think most of the West doesn't have hostess clubs, if any of the West. They're not really a big part. And even if they do have them, they're not cultural like they are in Japan. But this, too, they thought that a lot of Westerners wouldn't really get the trivia. They wouldn't understand the questions and things like that. My argument to that, of course, would be that if they had given it to us, we would have made the effort to try to learn it. And I think they would have been surprised how much they could have taught us about Japan. That stuff that I think a lot of people probably don't know. But they didn't add this stuff in because they thought it would alienate. And what ended up happening is that because there was a small but devout following for Yakuza, it ended up hurting the people they already had, not enticing people that were maybe on the fence to come in. So a lot of those changes ended up being backfired. They ended up being double-edged swords, I guess. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but the point remains. They didn't help, they only hurt, really. And so with 4, we got most of everything back. We got the hostess clubs, we got the hostess missions. That was all from the get-go. They changed some minor tweaks, which they do with everyone, but more or less we got that. But it's 5 that I really want to talk about. Because 5 also took us a long time to get. We didn't think we were going to get 5. They announced 0 while we were still waiting for 5. And the fact that we got 0 is kind of mind-blowing because at the time, the future was so uncertain. People were outright asking Sega, where is this game? Yakuza 5, because we want it. We really want it. But it looked like, for a time being at least, that we weren't going to get it. But 5, and I'll tell you why, really impressed me. You see, 5 was the first time in the series that they did not hold back. They didn't hold back shit from us. We got all the side quests, all the character missions, but more importantly, there's one side quest I want to talk about because it's very important. It's one of the most obnoxious, hard, fucking annoying side quests in the entire franchise, and I would not trade it for the world for this very, very important reason. See, Haruka gets a mission during her time in the game where she is in Osaka, and it's not majorly important to her story. It's not going to spoil the plot line to anybody who's excited to pick it up when it's coming out. It's not going to really, like, you're not going to be like, oh god damn it, you ruined everything. But it is kind of a spoiler, so I'm prefacing it with that. But here we go. Haruka gets a side quest where the funny man in a Manzai comedy group. Now, if you don't know what Manzai is, I have the Wikipedia behind me. So it's a two-man group. I don't need to look at it for this. If you watch a Japanese movie, you've probably seen them. They're usually, if it's about comedy, they're usually in there somewhere. A lot of Japanese films are also framed with it. I don't know if anybody's ever seen Tokyo Zombie, but the two main characters basically comprise a Manzai group. But it essentially consists of the funny man and the straight man. And the straight man basically makes a blunt, straight, completely like nonchalant statement about whatever the situation is. The funny man reacts to it in the comical fashion. The appropriate terms, this is why I have the Wikipedia open, is Sukamoni, that's the straight man, and Boke, who is the funny man. And so Haruka gets requested to be the straight man in a comedy group because the straight man that was in the comedy group, he left. I forget what specifically he did. I'm sure I'll get to re-experience it when 5 re-releases on the PlayStation 4. But he left, and Haruka has to do this thing. Now, you would think that this is the setup for the usual mission, where you get the multiple choice and you have to figure out which one. But no, it's way harder than that. It's only way harder than that because if you don't speak Japanese. And at the time, I wasn't super good at it. I'm still not great at it, but I'm learning, so I've actually gotten a lot better than I was at it. If you don't know Japanese, it becomes very weird because what it is you have it's a straightforward dialogue between the two characters where the other character will say his whole line and he'll say it in Japanese, but it'll be subtitled. Now, the subtitle doesn't necessarily translate to the Japanese because in the Japanese, of course, nouns, verbs, participles, post-participles, nipples. I'm not an English major. Don't ask me to name the parts of a sentence, but they're switched around a lot in that language. So not only does the translation not necessarily correlate, it's very hard to tell because they speak very fast, but some of their words are very big, or some of their sentences combined, I should say, because they have multiple parts of them that basically become one word, but they're multiple parts of the sentence. It's very hard to gauge where the sentence ends, but not only are you judged on coming in at the right moment with your response, you have 4 responses and you're judged on giving the right response. So not only do you have to give the right response to the quest, you have to give it at the right time. And if you don't speak Japanese, it can be very, very hard. But I would not trade this mission for the world, even though I raged about it for a long ass time. It took me like 2-3 hours to beat the final stage of it, where you had to get a 90 out of 100, which is basically doing it perfect. But It was the first time that I genuinely felt the Yakuza franchise was treating the Western audience like they would their own. Like they were giving us the chance to experience the culture unabashed and without that slight coverage of translation. And you know, I remember that one. I remember that one very distinctly. Don't ask me to tell you any of the other side quests in Yakuza 5, but I remember that one because for the first time I really felt that I was getting the full experience. And that brings us to where we're going right now. I mean, I took a long detour, but we're there at the sentence. Here we go. And the reason I had to go through all this, essentially. In Japan, Yakuza is referred to as Ryoga Godoko, meaning like a dragon. And like a dragon is the perfect sentence to describe Kazuma Kiryu. He is a mythical figure who is heroic, stoic, powerful, the perfect embodiment of a dragon. And of course, he becomes known as the legendary Yakuza. In Japan, Yakuza is referred to as Ryoga Godoko. That's the original title for it before it was changed to Yakuza for the Western audience. Which, again, probably because they thought that would be easier for us to digest than their original statement. I always liked that because, I mean, Kazuma Kiryu is like a dragon. He's stoic, he's heroic, he's powerful. He's this mythical figure who stands above the rest. He's the perfect embodiment of a dragon. And like a dragon for the Japanese audience, always fit the bill. But it was also created for him. I mean, he wasn't really referred to as the Dragon of Dojima in the first game. He became the Dragon of Dojima by surviving the process, by becoming this important figure. He's also referred to for a lot of the franchise as the fourth chairman because he claimed that role as well. But his comparisons to the dragon, especially the dragon on his back, is what defined him. That was who he was. Now, we all know that Kazuma Kiryu's story has come to an end. The new character, Ichiban. I was on the fence about it, I really was. When he first appeared in the phone game, he seemed like a cocky, douchey asshole. When they reintroduced him for the main game, I was actually very excited. He seemed like a very sympathetic character who I was actually looking forward to experiencing the journey of. But unfortunately, yet again, they have decided to kind of take a step back and, I feel, screw the Western audience. They've decided to call the new franchise Yakuza Like a Dragon. I have some issues with this. That's the whole fucking build-up was to this, to me bitching about this. If you sat through this so far, good on you. But my issue with this is, yes, Ichiban has a dragon on his back as well, but he's not like a dragon. But that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. What I have a problem with Like a Dragon is exactly this. I have a problem with it because I want Ichiban to succeed. And I feel like calling the game Yakuza Like a Dragon is the most pandering bullcrap in the entire universe. And I'll explain to you why. The problem with calling the new franchise Like a Dragon, or Yakuza Like a Dragon, and the assumption is that either this is a placeholder, I can't say if that's certain or not, but as it stands right now, it's kind of looking like maybe what's going to happen is they're going to preface this with this, and then that's just going to be this series. And I've heard a lot of people tell me, "Oh no, I'm super excited for that. I love that phrase and all that." And I'm totally down with that. I understand where that's coming from, but I want to state my case here. Case number one, okay? That's Kazuma's phrase, and that might sound unfair, but I don't think it is, because back in 2004 2004 or 2003. I don't remember when the series was officially conceived. It released in 2005 in Japan and 2006 in America. But when it was conceived, and that was eventually the name for it, it was meant to describe the main character, Kazuma Kiryu. Now, he is, and this is a very important characteristic of him, he's very stoic. Kazuma Kiryu doesn't have the emotion of many of the other characters in the franchise. Now, he gets angry, and he will protect the people he loves. That is true. But one of the most, the most iconic parts about him is that he reacts to situations with that stoic face, the very unemotional. It's sometimes very funny to watch depending on the situation. It's sometimes very badass. And when he breaks it, when he's being very emotional and he's protecting the people he loves, that's the parts you jump up and you cheer. But that, I think, is the most important characteristic of the dragon. Like, they don't have that emotion, that carnal instinct. Like, they do what they want to do, but Kazuma very much embodies the concept by being this stoic, larger-than-life figure. Ichiban is not going to be that character, and I don't want him to be. I don't want another stoic character. I barely even want them to continue making Yakuza games. Judgment was perfect proof that another character can inhabit that world in his own story, with his own name. I almost want them to make Ichiban's story the same thing. I would say kill the Yakuza franchise, just let that die with Kazuma, but we all know that the reason that they're continuing the Yakuza name is because they don't have faith that the Yakuza fans would follow them to a new franchise, even though Judgment outsold expectations. But Ichiban is a more impulsive character. He's more emotional. And this is a good thing. That's going to be a very, very big departure from what we're used to out of a lead character in this franchise. And I want that. I really do. But by calling it like the dragon, you're basically just inviting the comparison to Kazuma Kiryu, but I know that's what you're intending, right? I know that's what they want. They are doing that so the audience is still of that, oh, okay, but they're calling back to Kazuma Kiryu, so I can feel confident in buying this game. But that's honestly the wrong way to go about it. Let's start with the elephant in the room. They changed the gameplay. I mean, now it's a turn-based battle game. Now, they have said that there's no emotional attachment. They can always switch back if there's a dislike of this. But the more I think about it, the more I actually like this. Mainly because of how they built it into the character. See, they've already confirmed that in the world, people are seeing street fights. That's what anybody watching is seeing. A basic, straightforward street fight. But the main character loves Dragon Quest. Loves it. Dragon Quest being one of the most popular games in Japan, and honestly, before he went to prison, it probably would have been among the top games in Japan. It still is, but it would have been more so before he went to prison. It's a perfect identifier of his old life, the life he had before he went to prison, that he gets to bring into it. In the same way that Kazuma Kiryu spent so much time in his game getting culture shocked by cell phones, drones, this character gets to cling on to something that he had years prior and is still going pretty strong. But we just had a Dragon Quest that launched in America, and it did very well. But I'm actually happy that Dragon Quest is coming into this. That's a good thing. That's a great thing, because it gives the character a personality that's all his own, and that the street fights are going to be what people see as actual street fights, but he's imagining them as a turn-based battle scenario. That is also awesome, because it builds him as a character. And that honestly makes him very relatable, because I've done the same thing. I don't think anybody hasn't, where they have a situation, they think, oh, what would this be like as a turn-based battle? I think that's really cool. But that departure, everything they have done for that departure, outside of the actual change, has basically said, okay, we're doing this, but we don't own it. It's not really us. Then don't hold us to it. See, when Dragon Quest XI launched in America, we didn't really know what to think, but it ended up blowing everybody who played it away. It was a classic JRPG that stuck to its guns while updating itself, and that's, in a lot of ways, what Yakuza is doing now. And it should be, because Kazuma's gone. We're not going backwards, we're going forwards. Now, I'm not saying that the solution is to go turn-based. And to be honest, I have a lot of problems with Judgment too, because Judgment was way too similar to Yakuza, but it was its own franchise. So we're in a situation where the spin-off is more like the base game, while the base game is now going in this spin-off direction. I almost wish Judgment continued on the Yakuza name, and this was its own spin-off side series. But I digress. I'm just saying, more lawyery stuff in the next Judgment, if they get to make another Judgment, and maybe, calm down on the 50,000 connections to the Yakuza that Yagami has, because I love how almost every one of the trailers really downplayed the fact that every other mission was going to be involving some of his friends from the Yakuza. But when Dragon Quest launched, it launched with a very not long, but a classic JRPG subtitle, Echoes of an Elusive Age. Have it pulled up there because I couldn't find my case anywhere to do this. But in Japan, Yakuza 7 is going to be called The Whereabouts of Light and Dark. Kind of see the similarities there? That's because they're owning it. The Whereabouts of Light and Dark owns that it is a JRPG. It owns that they are changing the franchise, and it owns that it is an epic quest. Because that's what it's supposed to feel like, I imagine. I can't say what the game is going to be, but I think, I'm thinking it's supposed to be Ichiban's epic quest. I mean, I don't know everything he's going to have to do, but it seems very likely that a lot of the game is going to revolve around the idea that he is trying to fight the evil and save the good. If it's anything like a JRPG, those are going to be the themes. It sounds basic, but it's very important, because the end of the day, he's seeing his world like Dragon Quest, one of his favorite franchises. And if he's seeing the world that way, if he's emotionally experiencing the world that way, then he's got to think that he is the heroic hero trying to rescue the light and cleanse the darkness. It's just, if you take that away, his epic quest feels so much less of that. And I can't, again, say it's going to be that. But even if it's not, it's a JRPG, you should own the idea that it will be. My point is, we've gotten over the culture shock. Yakuza 0 should have snapped us out of it. But it seems like the Yakuza franchise still does not know how to approach the Western audience. It's an issue. It's a big issue. And let me tell you how you do it. You tell them to go fuck themselves. I know that sounds like it's shitty advice, but it really isn't. If you believe in your product, if you believe in what you are doing, then the people who don't believe in you, they're assholes. And the people who do believe in you are the ones that you want to impress. You can't ever sway someone's opinion. I've learned that the hard way. You're never going to get the people that are so against this to say, okay, I was wrong about you. I mean, there are probably some, but the majority, not really. And the people that are going to support you are going to support you regardless. They're going to buy it whether you make it an action game or a turn-based game. They're like me. They're so ingrained in the experience of Yakuza that they just have to. They have to be a part of it. I want to be a part of it. I don't care what you do to the game. You have never let me down. You've been with me, Yakuza, okay? I'm speaking directly to Yakuza now. You've been with me through the best and the worst of times in my life. And that will always matter to me. And I will always support that franchise. Whether they do this or some other crazy bullshit, I don't give a fuck. I will be there. Screaming, shut up and take my money. Trying to prop Ichiban up against Kazuma Kiryu and let the momentum of, well, you loved Kazuma, get ready for Ichiban, carry him through, it's not gonna work. You need to own the differences. You need to own the fact that this is an RPG, a JRPG. I don't care if you call it the Whereabouts of Light and Dark. Hell, I personally would just prefer you to call it Yakuza Quest. That's what I want you to call the game. Yakuza Quest, because that's what it is. It's fucking Yakuza Dragon Quest. It's a crossover hybrid. If you really didn't want to do this, you wouldn't be doing it in the first place. The safer bet to not alienate the American audience is to just do what you've been doing. I mean, the change of location is a big enough change that I think people can get re-excited about the franchise. But you're doing it turn-based. All of this ties into Like a Dragon. It harkens back to a time when Kazuma Kiryu was the lead, and the hero was stoic, and the game was about that journey. But calling that up for Ichiban is both unfair to Kazuma Kiryu and unfair to Ichiban, because he has to live up to that character that he'll never be able to live up to. Ultimately, Yakuza Like a Dragon feels like a step back. It feels like, yet again, we've gone back to the PlayStation 3 era where you really weren't sure how to attract the American audience. Ultimately, Yakuza Like a Dragon feels like a step back. It feels like a name contrived by somebody who doesn't understand how to connect with the English-speaking Western audience. It feels like you're desperately trying to hearken to what the franchise was while trying to make the franchise what you want it to be. Now, whether this sticks or it doesn't, I don't know. But I don't want to go back to the PlayStation 3 era. I really don't. I loved every game you made there, but with each new game, I was terrified of what was going to come next. If you were going to get it that time, or you weren't going to get it, or if we were going to get it at all. You want to really set your franchise apart, Like a Dragon is not the subtitle. The Western audience has never gotten Like a Dragon from any other games. And I don't feel like the first time we should get it is when it's preferencing a character that it was never meant to preference. Ichiban was just a pipe dream. Nobody knew he was coming. Nobody knew Kazuma's story was going to end where it did. But Kazuma was like a dragon. Now in Japan, keep calling it that, because that's always been your tagline. That's always been your title, I should say. But in the West, no, I don't want the first time I get it for the character that is immediately replacing the guy it was meant for. If you're going to tagline it, you should also give it something that feels wholly unique to Ichiban. He should be his own person. I don't know. I feel like I went back and forth a bunch, but this is an important issue to me. It's my favorite franchise. Like I said, I love it. I've been playing it for so long. It's gotten me through the best and the worst times. And I look forward to many, many years of it in the future. But anyway, that's the end of my rant. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, congratulations. If you didn't make it this far, I completely understand. But I'm Digital Dilemma, and this is my channel. Go down to the what is it? The menu, the description. There we go. And that's the word I was looking for. Go down to the description. We'll have links to Discord, to Twitter, to Instagram, to my Twitch channel. Come check it out if you want to watch the streams. I stream Yakuza a shit ton, so that'll be on there a bunch. But what do you think? What does everybody else think? Do they like the title? Do they not like the title? Do you remember the dark ages of the PlayStation 3? Like I said, wasn't trying to alienate anybody with that, but it was very important to go over that, because I have talked to a few people that just don't remember that was a major thing. And of course, I didn't even touch on that Ishin and Kaizen came out at the exact during that era as well, and never came to America because they didn't think they could port them. And then the PSP version, or the PSP game, which was actually the first time we got to play as a character other than Kazuma, really, because both of the samurai games, even though they weren't Kazuma Kiryu, they were character modeled off of him. So the PSP version as well was another one that never came to America. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty dark age, all things considered. And now we're a little more situated in the future of the franchise, especially when it relates to the West. But yeah, what does everybody think about the title? Did I make any good points? Do you agree? Disagree? What? How? I do. I'd love to have the conversation. So if you want to have the conversation, let's do it. But yeah, that's the end of my stream. Well, my video. Always in stream mindset. And yeah, links in the description below. Have a good day, and I will catch you all later.